there's no turning back from this. I literally, as they say in the AA book, man, it's like I have a choice to quit or die.
The Rocking Recovery Podcast.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Rocking Recovery Podcast. And today I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine and lead singer extraordinaire of the band Gemini Syndrome, Aaron Nordstrom. Thanks for coming on, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Dude, absolute pleasure, man. With the podcast talking sobriety recovery. And so with you on your sobriety journey, how long have you been on that journey so far?
I have just crossed my 6 years without any alcohol in my system.
Nice.
Uh, my functional title would probably be California sober.
With getting sober, was there a trigger point or just like a moment where you're like, okay, like this is not working in my life anymore?
Yeah, I mean, there was probably a lot of those, to be honest with you. I I ignored them for years. I mean, if I'm being really transparent, I can think back to times long before I quit drinking where I was showing signs of physical dependency. And this is,
Mm,
as far back as my 20s. Um, so I lived that way for a long time. And, for better or worse, I was able to function that way for years. And eventually you just can't function anymore. I don't care who you are.
mm,
And I don't care what you're doing. If you have a poison at the end of the day
yeah.
of some sort, and alcohol is absolutely that. Probably, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's probably one of the worst chemicals you can put in you, and it's one of the most easily accessible for us.
Right.
Um, but you just can't sustain, your body can't sustain it. It can't. There's just no way. And eventually it got to the place, I mean, I had to drink in the morning, like had to, not I want to, or this is fun. This is like I couldn't function without.
Yeah.
Started out as a shot of vodka, and then that turned into I couldn't function without a pint of vodka just to get the day started. Like just to be able to do work of any kind or take calls or, like walk
Right.
around. It was really no way to live. And I spent a good couple, 2, 3, 4 years trying to get sober. And that involved, I went to one rehab that was like a full live-in that I was there for 3 weeks, and that was a nightmare experience. And then I did a lot of like hospital detox stays where I would get to a place where like I knew something was wrong, or I would have a lot of bouts where I would try to quit on my own, and I would go like 36 hours or 24 hours without any booze, but then I was shaking and dry heaving and just all day, and it never goes away, right? It got to the point where uh, I was trying to quit, where I was in my final stages of getting there, and I had a handful of seizures. I coded, my heart stopped for 90 seconds, and my kung fu teacher, who I was staying with at the time, did CPR and saved my life. And even that wasn't the last time. I still had another one or two relapses after that. It took me another probably 9 months to really be done. And there was a day I was living with my brother from Chicago, who lives out in Vegas here now with his wife. And him and I were living together, and he tells the stories like I remember the moment it happened. I remember you sitting on the couch in the living room in the morning, miserable, and something in your face changed, and you just looked at me and you said, "I'm done. I'm fucking done." And I was just tired of living that way, man. I was tired of being sick, tired of being sick, tired every day, all day. And like all the AA stuff that talks about, this stopped being a choice, this stopped being fun, this stopped being for recreation, this started being necessity. That statement is real. And I remember being a younger kid, seeing stuff on like VH1's Behind the Music about these rock bands and stuff. And like, this guy was drinking a bottle of vodka a day. Bullshit he was. No
Right.
way. And then I found myself in my mid 30s drinking a bottle of vodka a day, wondering like, how'd I get here?
I watched it happen with like all the different bottles that would go into the trash. The trash would just fill up a lot quicker every single day. And then the bottles kept getting bigger, right? So it was like,
Now you're in handles instead of fifths, and
hmm
you know
oh
we're
yeah.
doing the
If
walk of
it's like
shame.
a small pint or something like that, I'm like, okay, that's a lunch break, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at
uh,
all.
you
That's a lunch
know,
break.
involved in all the things I was doing. Even if it was going out to like even like to dinner, right? It's like, okay, well, let's go someplace. And I'm like strategically placing like, okay, let's find a restaurant that's got a really, really good bar. And I'm just like, fuck. And then just everything just spiraled out of control.
There was definitely a reckless abandon I had as a younger person, where I had no interest in living a long life, dude. I was fine with being checked out by 30, and so I lived that way. When I first moved to Hollywood when I was 21, man, I was a maniac. I mean, it wasn't just booze; it was everything. Like, what do you got? It was that Alice in Chains song.
Okay.
Uh, and I didn't have a particular thing. It was kind of like we said, it was just being high all the time. And that was the life I envisioned for myself in a sense. I didn't really care, like I said, to stick around here very long. I've never quite felt normal as a human. I always felt like I didn't belong here. And so it started out in a sense in in those days, it was fun. I'm not going to lie. I had some of the best times in my life running around Hollywood like a maniac in
Mhm.
the early 2000s. We
Oh
had some
yeah.
amazing memories and really fun times. But it's like all of the cliche stories that you hear is there's a point where like that chasing the dragon
Mhm.
is trying to really chase those good times.
Yeah.
And those times, you're young once for a reason, you know, and
Exactly.
you're not meant to do that forever. And eventually, it's funny you said you talked about how it just becomes the same thing over and over again. I started noticing, and I really noticed this after I cleaned up and got clear-headed, was that like being back around people who are still doing any particular substance doesn't really matter. They all kind of
Mhm.
have their own flavor, but I would notice that there was patterns that started exhibiting themselves with people on their substance of choice, and then it's like they're like literally having it's like the same party
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
time. Like you
Mhm.
go through this cycle of whether it was an apartment party with a bunch of people boozing and stuff. And then like there's a certain point in the evening where everybody's telling the same story
Yeah.
and they're stuck on this like alcohol
Like a
loop.
loop. Yeah, exactly.
And they just keep telling you the same thing over and over again. I'm like, wow, that's not even fun.
No.
And uh, we're not having any real conversation here. There's no real, and then in that state of mind, you lose the ability, I think, to hear anybody else too. You're just on your rant, and as long as somebody is on your rant with you, then you guys are fueling that fire and that rant, whether it's a celebration of how fucking awesome we are in that moment,
Mhm. Right.
or how mad we are at something,
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever it might be. But that thing becomes
You're in each other's bleachers in
And
conversation.
if you've noticed this in your sober journey, if you get around people who are in that place, there's like this really weird disconnect because they don't understand why you're not on the trip with them.
Yeah.
Because I'm not on the trip with you. I'm not in that. I'm seeing a clearer perspective of yeah, I heard you the first 80 times,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
and that ceases to be in a clear, sober mindset
Mhm.
that becomes painfully obvious, like how empty it is.
Going across the street to, we would call them our morning Kickstarters. And so we just, because like the liquor store was right across the street from our work. So we just literally skip over there, freaking just, grab a couple, freaking shoot them down in the freaking bathroom and freaking bam.
I think all of it, in some way, when it gets to a point where it's like that, is stemming from some kind of pain.
Yeah.
Whether it's trauma from before the addiction started or whether it's the trauma from the addiction itself, because there's nothing or very few things in life I've experienced that are more defeating than being dependent on something that you no longer want to do
Oh, yeah.
and
And then,
not knowing how to really get out of it and not knowing another way to live, Like I
And that's
remember.
a powerful point, real quick. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, but like I think one thing that anybody that's saying that they've never touched a drop of alcohol in their life, or maybe they got a family member that's going through, or a significant other, or somebody, and they're just like, I don't know how to handle this. They don't want to stop. No, the crazy thing is like we do. And we can't, and until certain steps are taken and you walk that path and that fire and you go through all those different
Yeah,
experiences of relapse, whatever. But like that's a sickening feeling when it's like it's like I don't even want to drink this,
guilt
but
and
it's
shame,
like
guilt and shame, man. I'm sure you've had the experience. This was my mornings would be like standing in front of the freezer,
mm,
have this whole like conversation. You don't have to do this. You don't have to. Today could be the day. And I'd fucking
yeah,
open the door, and then I'd stare at the bottle, and I'd have, you don't have to do this.
yeah,
And that process would repeat until you're here. And then there's like this, fuck it moment,
yep,
right? Once it's on, and then it was like, and then that comes with its own guilt too. It's like,
oh
well,
yeah,
look what a fuck up I am. I'm already here. I couldn't even say no now, so I might as well drink all day.
yep,
And then, and then now it's just a cycle, and it's all the things that the AA people talk about. It's all the stuff that's in the big book, which I really love the big book. That was super
mm,
helpful. I was never a very prominent AA person. I went to lots of meetings in the early days
yeah,
and witnessed and experienced a bunch of different versions of that in different states and different cities and stuff. And I took some stuff away from it for sure, but it
yeah,
was not my long-term solution.
no,
I feel like for me, AA was another version of that cycle of that guilt and shame and just living in that. It's like once I made the real decision, like there's a place where you can want to stop, but not
mhm,
really want to stop.
yeah,
It's like you almost wish that I just wish I could keep drinking and not have these side effects.
yeah, right, exactly,
That's the truth, right? And
yeah,
that place, no one will quit in that place. No one. I don't care who you are. You won't force anybody to. If I learn anything about my own journey, and I know myself, like nobody tells me what to do. It
yeah,
wasn't going to happen until I made that choice. Um, and eventually, hopefully you make that choice before you die.
yeah,
You know, at the end of the day, hopefully you do. But like, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty that comes with those decisions. Like, how do I live now? For
yeah. I
all of
think.
my social adulthood had been surrounding
Mm,
mainly booze, but drugs in general. But it was like you mentioned, like for dinner, you got to find the place with the cool bar. For us, it was like, well, what are we going to do? Well, I don't know. Let's meet at the bar. And that would be how we started the plan. We didn't have a plan. It was just like, we'll just start tying one on and see where, see where
yeah, we
we're
always come up with shit when we're drinking, so
because that's the nature of the uninhibited world, right?
yeah.
And again, like when you're young and you're doing it in a place that in a way that's maybe moderated and or at least somewhat aware, you know, I had fun. But eventually like your motivations change. Like I said, you're just
Mm,
chasing that memory of a good time when just look around and like objectively are all these people having a good time? Just a blanket way to say is like all of that energy that you have, all of that attention, all of that time, all of that equates to energy of some kind. All of it's going into that one activity.
mhm,
And we know from physics that energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed into
absolutely.
something else.
Mhm,
So if you stop putting that energy into that thing, that energy has to go somewhere. Has to. So yeah, a lot of people become gym rats. They become super into physical fitness. And I did go to the gym for some time. There was definitely a period where that was helpful for me. And I think that's necessary in recovery too, because you're counteracting all of the lack of exercise you probably had, the lack of physical activity and well-being that you lived with for however long.
oh yeah,
Uh,
and you eat like shit too when like you're on like
if
drugs or
I mean
alcohol.
if I
It's
if I ate at all,
yeah, exactly.
towards the end of it, dude, there was a period in my life, right before like the end. of my drinking campaign where I was living with this guy and his family. He had had the heart to put me up. I was getting divorced and
Mm,
everything was a mess. And I was staying at his house here in Vegas. I would walk to the Albertsons. I'd buy myself a bottle of vodka and I'd buy myself a bottle of Pedialyte and I'd buy myself a packet of ramen and I might make the ramen.
mm,
And that's how I lived for like a month.
yeah.
I don't remember even ever really eating food in that month. And eventually there was an intervention, and that's when I had the coding event shortly after that. That was like the worst of it, probably.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, if you're even eating at all, like I had to, at that point though, it had morphed from just addiction to like pure depression, and I was really ready to just check out at that point. And it's funny how that thing can morph too. You know, it can start
oh
out
yeah.
we're in Hollywood, we're partying. It's 10 years later, we're getting record deals and we're celebrating. Now we're on tour every day. Every day it's a party. We're at a new bar every night. And everybody who's at that show, that's their time to go out for the month. You know,
Mm,
this is where it gets real dangerous because for you as the artist, that's your job. And in those days, we were sometimes doing 7 shows a week, like no, just
oh yeah.
sometimes 2 or 3 weeks in a row, so no days off. And every night was a party. And you're absolutely right. You got a bar tab, you got drink tickets, you got people at the
Fans
show.
coming up and being like, "Hey, I haven't seen you
Hey,
since last year. Let's do
have
a
a shot,
shot."
have a shot with me. So it's their party, and that's every day. And then that, you know,
Yep.
then years go by,
Oh,
and
dude.
now
Yes.
now you can't get out of the thing. At least for me, it was like, well, I can't get out of this. You know, it was
Mm,
to the point I had one of my hospital stays after a seizure, and the doctor was like, you at this point, if you ever relapse again from this point out ever in your life, and you decide to quit again, and you don't come to the hospital, you'll probably die. The chances of you seizing at this point, because you've done it so many times in your body, the liver, according to traditional Chinese medicine, the liver has a memory.
mm,
And whereas, like, this is the metaphor I use. If you're a 20-year cigarette smoker and you quit for 5 years, your lungs will clear out and your lungs will repair themselves. And if you start smoking again, your lungs will be in that state of whatever repair they've gotten to, and you'll start smoking again, and they will deteriorate from that point. It's not the case with your liver. If you are a 20-year drinker and you quit drinking for 5 years and your liver heals and your body goes through that process, and then you have a drop of alcohol, your liver remembers the last state it was in when it had alcohol in it. And
oh shit.
it goes to that place. So all of the progress
Um,
you made, all of that healing is for naught. That's why every relapse is worse than the last one
yeah.
because you're not making up any lost time. You're literally
You're
starting
starting back at
you just
yeah.
pick up the baton from that place, which you think about it, if you've ever had a relapse, like why is this
It's
worse
just
than the last time I drank? And then the next relapse is why is this worse than the last time I drank? And that's why. Because
mm,
you never gain the ground back with alcohol, ever. You just can't do it. And I think in my particular journey, that was a big part of the aha moment was like, there's no turning back from this. I literally, as they say in the AA book, man, it's like I have a choice to quit or die.
yeah.
And this isn't a metaphor. This isn't a
This is
scare
straight. Yeah.
tactic by a doctor. This is straight talk. This is
Yeah.
like you're gonna quit or you're gonna die. Do I really want to die? Is this depression? Is it really the true voice in my head that I should be listening to? No, it's not. I don't really want to die.
Mm,
What I want is to not live this way anymore.
yeah.
And I feel it for me, and I think a lot of people, but I can only speak from my experience, that a lot of people's depression is exactly that. It's not that I don't want to live, it's that I don't want to live this
It's
life.
like,
I want to live some other life. I want to live a different thing. And in those states of mind, you don't maybe have the tools to even or the imagination or the clarity to even see another way.
oh
You know,
yeah. And you honestly don't. Like, I mean, I've definitely been at that far end, and I gotta give a huge shout out to my bass player, man. I mean, he definitely saved my ass, and I mean that in like every sense of the word. It went from this like depression thing. I had an ex of mine from, 5 years, and and she had a son, and I got, was really attached to him, and then just, alcohol involved situations and everything like that really, I fucked that up. And so when I'm going through this whole like depression stage, our separation and everything like that, it just, yeah, I don't know, it came to a head because, the first month, kind of like what you were saying after your divorce, it was just kind of like, every day was just not giving a fuck. It was, I like this depression will run wild, and I'm just gonna be like watching it behind the scenes, like, I'm no longer in control of the situation anymore. Um, and then, it just kept, going and going. And then, it's like it reached a peak one day, one random day. And like I wasn't even like angry or anything. And like I just like I started drinking really early in the morning, and like I knew that there was like this like bridge right down the street. Um and just without a care or anything was just walking to it, like all intention of doing this. And as I get, and I'm like sitting on the far end of the bridge, and like I'm looking, because like it's not water, it's an overpass and everything. And so I was like, okay, like this is okay. So I'm gonna reach out and see if, because I don't give a fuck about myself at this point. Like if somebody else that I could call could just at least, my mind, I cannot control my mind right now. My mind is completely checked out. My emotions are checked out. Like I actually have no worry with doing this. And I called him, and it was looking back on it, it was just kind of funny, and how like my brain registered to it. But like he was sitting there, and like he was sitting in his car, and he was like looking, and like you could see the free route. Like he knew exactly where I was, and he's like, "You are not about to do that." So, like, it wasn't like hey man, it's gonna be okay. It's like, no, you're not gonna do that.
Let go and let God, man.
Uh,
Let That's
and it
the
was,
universe, God communicating to you through your fellow man, you know,
yeah, it
who
was,
will not do that.
yeah, it was so just very, that was like the one thing that came first thing out of his mouth, and the one thing that just stuck with me. I think he probably may have was talking afterwards, and then the communication afterwards, but like in that moment, like I don't know, it's just those few words, like I said, just freaking
Take
flipped the
away. Yeah.
switch.
Yeah.
And then it was like I went into more of an understanding, like, okay, yes, am I depressed? 100%. Um, am I using alcohol to mask this depression? 100%. But is this helping me right now with what's going on in this moment? Because right now I'm on the phone with my bass player that has to help you come down from a freaking bridge. Like, how's it working out for you so far? You know?
Yeah, it's scary that the brain, at a certain point, man, we know just from observing anybody who's drinking alcohol that like a certain point your rational function is gone. But there's a point with like heavy drinkers where the personality really checks out.
Yeah.
It's almost as if like my brother witnessed some behaviors from me where it was like I was acting like a possessed person, where I was like talking in voices and having full-on conversations with myself in my bedroom. I would lock myself in there and I
Mhm.
would just shit talk myself. I don't remember any of this. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't have recollections of these events, but he recounted them to me. He would sit outside my door and just make sure I didn't do anything crazy because I was crazy. I had a friend of mine, one of my closest friends in my life, who was also a very heavy drinker. We lived in Hollywood together, and he didn't get that phone call that you got, and he died the same. He died that way. And it was, I know he was fueled by booze. He had just gotten off tour, and his phone was, the screen had cracked, and I was wondering, like, why didn't he call me? Like, we were best friends,
Yeah.
and because he didn't have his phone, because he'd gotten smashed on tour, didn't have access to his numbers. I know he got drunk and got hammered, wasted, and got into one of those places, and it was like, I just can't do it anymore. Oh, I can't call anybody. Probably took it as a sign. You know what I
But
mean?
yeah. Yeah, we'll justify anything, I know.
And it was one of the hardest losses of my life, man, was getting that phone call about him. was one of the most unique people I ever met, and this shit can really happen to anybody. And I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
diminishing anybody's traumas. What I'm saying is that whatever your trauma is for you, that's how much it weighs. And like, there's
100%.
there's that old maxim that, I remember hearing in church and stuff that God will never give you anything that you can't handle.
Yeah.
And like, I honestly believe that, to,
Yeah.
to an extent, but whatever that thing is like an equal weight for everybody who's carrying their own baggage, right? So it keeps me from judging other people and their situations first and foremost, but it can help you have compassion. You know what I mean? Like it's real easy for people to be mad at, you know.
Everything, anything,
Well, I mean,
anyone.
and I mean like like the Chesters of the world, right? And my
Yeah.
friend, it's easy to be mad at those people for checking out and being in the throes of those places, but also, you don't know. And to that person, that weight of the world weighs as much as the world.
If you guys enjoyed this interview and you think it's over, check out what's coming up for part two with Aaron Nordstrom right here. Video alone for Remember We Die.
Mhm.
Um, was that an inspiration coming out of that mentality, or was that something that maybe like during you were still in that
During,
headspace, but you were
oh,
wanting to?
during, yeah, 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 yeah. During the writing of and the recording of Memento Mori, I was that whole process, right? I had been in some hospitalized situations. I was sober for the majority of writing that record, but I relapsed when we were in the studio and was hiding it. We were
Yeah.
in the studio alongside Hell Yeah, and Vinnie Paul was in the building every day, and Vinny would walk. I remember one day walking by me when it was like my drinking's still a secret. It's like noon.
Yeah.
Vinny walks by. He's like, "Want to do a shot?" And I was like, "Yeah."
The Rocking Recovery Podcast.